first, he was an intelligent thief. But now, he become a serial killer? For months, he broke into homes, stealing TVs, laptops, cash, anything he could carry. And every time, he vanished. But when the cops finally caught him, his punishment was just probation, and he walked away freely. That's when the game changed. He wasn't after houses anymore. Now, he was hunting people, and no one saw it coming until it was too late. His new way will shock you. The night was quiet in Beverly Hills. Inside a small apartment in Inglewood, Rockim Prowell stood in front of a mirror. In his hands was a mask, a lifelike rubber face that could change him completely. When he put it on, he became someone else, a young white man with curly hair and glasses. He looked himself carefully, adjusting the wig, the mask, even the angle of the light. This mask was more than a disguise. It was his key and his shield. Without it, he was exposed. With it, he became invisible. And for months, that's exactly what he did. Rockim carefully planned his break-ins. He robbed more than 30 houses in Beverly Hills and Los Angeles. He always made sure no one could find out who he really was. So he worked late at night, on quiet streets. He watched for lights, shadows, or any sign someone was home. Then he wore a mask, and it fooled everyone, even the police. For weeks, officers stared at security videos, trying to figure out who the thief was. All they saw was a man with light skin, curly hair, and sometimes his mouth slightly open. The mask was so perfect, no one saw through it, not even for a second. And they never guessed the truth. The real thief was a black man living far away in Inglewood. But back then, no one had a clue. Neighbors often felt something was off, but they couldn't say why. One evening, a woman saw a shadow moving across her yard. At first, she thought it was a cat. Then she realized it was a person. But by the time she understood, the figure was gone. Not long after, in another part of the city, someone else noticed a car parked too long near a big house. A few people called the police. Others just talked quietly with friends. No one realized it was the same thief behind all these strange moments. That thief? His name was Rockim, and he planned every move. He left almost no trace. He mostly stole things that were easy to carry and sell, like TVs and laptops. He didn't want to hurt or scare anyone. For him, it was simple. Take what you can and vanish before anyone sees you. And for months, it worked. But then, everything changed. One afternoon in May 2021, Beverly Hills police pulled over a car with stolen license plates. And Rockim was the one driving, calm and quiet, acting like he had nothing to hide. The officers asked him to step out, then searched the car, and that's when they found it. A mask so real, it looked like human skin. That's when they got suspicious. This wasn't just a traffic stop anymore. They took him in for questioning, got a search warrant, and went to his apartment. Inside, they found stolen laptops, TVs, and documents that proved he'd broken into dozens of homes. The man who always vanished. This time he was caught, and his whole world started to fall apart. Soon after, police pressed charges, breaking into homes, stealing valuables, and damaging property. Serious crimes, yes, but his sentence was light. Just probation. He never spent a day in jail. The mask he once wore was gone, and most of the stolen items had been returned. The system thought they had him under control. In fact, while everyone thought he was being watched, but he was planning something new. Breaking into houses wasn't exciting anymore. He wanted more danger, more risk. This time, he wanted to go after people, and he knew just where to find them. By late 2021, Rockim had found a new hunting ground. Dating apps. These online platforms let him find people quietly, without leaving footprints in the real world. He watched them, learned their routines, picked the ones who seemed lonely, trusting, or distracted. He built a fake identity. Polite, friendly, charming, the kind of person you'd feel safe talking to. His targets thought they were meeting someone sweet, maybe even someone who cared. Rockim knew the truth. Every message, every photo, every good morning, it was all part of the trap. And with each one, the man behind the screen was changing. The man who once wore a mask to steal TVs and jewelry was becoming something darker. Now he wasn't after things. He was hunting people. His targets were men in their 40s and 50s, quiet, predictable, often overlooked. Men no one checked on, no texts, no calls, no one wondered where they went or if they'd ever come back. And every meeting was planned down to the last detail. He picked places no one would see. Empty parking lots after midnight, alleys with broken lights, dinners where the cameras hadn't worked in years. And in those places, he moved without sound or hurry, like the room belonged to him, not them. This wasn't theft anymore. It was a game. And in this game, lives were the stakes, and only Rockim knew the rules. But the game had real players and real endings. To see how it ended, you have to go back to where it truly began. After his arrest in Beverly Hills and release on probation, Rockim Prowell should have faded into the background. For most people, a run-in with the law is a warning to stay quiet, keep your head down, and try to start fresh. But Rockim wasn't like most. The mask was gone, but the hunger still there. Inside him, something darker woke up. He didn't want things anymore. He wanted control over people, and the internet handed it to him. On his phone, he downloaded dating apps, not to find love, but to find targets. To strangers online, he looked harmless, just a guy hoping to find friendship, maybe even love. And he spent hours building fake profiles, choosing photos that smiled just right, writing messages that sounded safe. But every kind word, every smiling photo was just a lie. These apps did what no home break-in ever could. They brought victims straight to him, unaware of the danger. Miguel Angel King was one of the first. He was 52 years old, a kind man, known in his circle as someone who cared deeply for others. He had lived quietly in Los Angeles, working hard and trying to keep his life stable. Like many people, he hoped dating apps might bring him companionship. When he met Rockim, Miguel thought he had found a genuine connection. Miguel had no reason to suspect he was speaking to a predator. When the day came, he trusted Rockim enough to meet. That trust is what got him killed. Miguel's body was later discovered under brutal circumstances, his life taken far too soon. Family members were shocked, unable to process how a simple search for friendship had ended in violence. Miguel's death carried silence with it, the silence of trust broken. Not long after, another man crossed paths with Rockim, Robert Gutierrez, 57 years old. Robert's story, same as Miguel's in many ways. He too was older. He was open to meeting someone, and he placed his trust in the wrong hands. Robert had a gentle heart. Friends described him as a man who would give you the shirt off his back, who enjoyed laughter, who tried to see the best in people. When Robert began speaking to Rockim, there was no sign of danger. The messages were casual, sometimes warm, but behind the word, Rockim was already planning. He knew where to meet, when to strike, and how to leave behind as few traces as possible. Robert's life ended, just like Miguel's, taken in the shadows of what should have been a simple encounter. His family, devastated, struggled to understand how a man searching for companionship could be targeted so coldly. It seemed impossible that kindness could be punished, that loneliness could be weaponized. But not every one of Rockim's targets died. One man survived, whose name remains private, and his story revealed exactly how Rockim operated. Like Miguel and Robert, he'd met Rockim through a dating app. They exchanged messages and eventually agreed to meet. But something about the meeting felt off. Rockim was quiet, almost too quiet. His movements seemed deliberate, his eyes scanning the room, street, and the exits. When the moment came, Rockim tried to strike. The survivor fought back, struggling, shouting, resisting with everything he had. He shouldn't have made it out alive, but he did. Then he went to the police, and what he told them changed everything. It proved Rockim wasn't just a thief, he was hunting people. The survivor's courage helped investigators connect the dots. It showed how Rockim tricked his victims, how he chose them, Without his testimony, the full truth might have stayed hidden for much longer. But now, it was clear this was the true transformation of Rockim Prowell. He had gone from thief to murderer, from stealing possessions to stealing lives. His crimes were no longer about objects, but about control, complete and terrifying control. Each victim was carefully chosen, each meeting carefully planned. It was as if he believed he could outsmart the entire system. How could they let a man with dozens of crimes behind him, a man they already caught? How could a man with such a history slip into the shadows of dating apps and take lives without being stopped sooner? The system's choice now stood in sharp relief. By giving Rockim probation instead of prison, the courts had unknowingly allowed him to evolve into something worse. But when the survivors spoke and the families stood up, the system finally had no choice but to face what it had created. The courtroom was filled with tension. Reporters lined the benches, families of victims sat together in silence, and prosecutors prepared their case. To the outside world, he no longer looked like the clever thief or the digital predator. Without his mask, without his careful disguise, he appeared ordinary. But the crimes he was accused of were anything but ordinary. And now, the prosecution painted an unsettling picture. They described Rockim not as a desperate thief, but as a man who evolved from thief to predator, from hiding behind a mask to hiding behind digital screens. They showed the jury how he once broke into over 30 homes, wearing a disguise mask so realistic it tricked even seasoned detectives. Then they showed how, after probation, he began hunting people instead of property. They told the stories of Miguel Angel King and Robert Gutierrez, two men who trusted him and paid with their lives. The survivors' testimony became the turning point. Standing in front of the court, his voice steady but filled with emotion, he described the night Rockim attacked him. He spoke of the sudden change in Rockim's expression, the feeling of danger, the fight to survive. His words gave life to what might have otherwise been just numbers on paper, times, dates, digital records. The survivor's courage reminded the court that behind every piece of evidence was a human story. Then came the defense, and with it, a very different story. Rockim's defense attorneys argued differently. They called him a victim of circumstance, a man struggling with who he was, someone who made bad choices but wasn't beyond saving. They pointed to his past, claiming he grew up in a world where survival meant cheating, lying, doing whatever it took. They said the break-ins were crimes of desperation, not evil. And when it came to the murders, they tried to plant doubt. Was it possible someone else had tricked the victims? Was the digital trail too weak to prove guilt beyond doubt? But the mask told its own story. Prosecutors held it up in the courtroom, letting the jury see the pale rubber face. It became a symbol, not just of theft, but of deception itself. That mask reminded everyone Rockim spent his life hiding behind lies, fake faces, fake names, fake kindness. Experts would explain why. Psychologists called to the stand explained Rockim's behavior. They described him as a man obsessed with control. The break-ins weren't just about stealing things. They were about invading private spaces, proving he could outsmart anyone. The murders weren't only about taking lives. They were about crushing people who trusted him. Experts said Rockim showed signs of something deeper: fake charm, constant manipulation, no real empathy, and the ability to copy emotions without feeling them. They pointed out how he built fake online identities, just like he once wore the mask. To them, Rockim wasn't stealing to survive. He was stealing to feel powerful. Every break-in, every fake message, every act of violence, it all fed the same hunger: to feel superior, to feel in control, to feel like he was always one step ahead, while everyone else was blind. But no psychological profile could capture what came next. The sound of grief no theory could explain. The hardest moments in court came when families of the victims spoke. Miguel's relatives described him as a man who loved music, who had dreams of simple happiness. Robert's family spoke of his kindness, his laughter, his generosity. Their voices cracked as they asked why. Why did this happen? Why did someone already caught by police once get the chance to strike again? Their pain filled the courtroom with silence, heavier than any argument. For them, justice could never bring back what was lost. But it could stop Rockim from hurting anyone else, and the evidence made sure it would. As the trial reached its end, the evidence was overwhelming. The break-ins, the mask, the probation, the murders, the survivor's testimony, the digital trail, all of it pointed to one man. The jury deliberated, but the outcome was never in real doubt. Rockim Prowell was found guilty. Guilty of the break-ins, guilty of deception, guilty of murder, guilty of attempting to take another life. The judge sentenced him not to probation, not to a second chance, but to life behind bars. For some, it was justice. For others, it was too late. The system had failed twice, once by letting him walk free after dozens of break-ins, and again by not stopping him before he claimed lives. But what stayed with people, long after the verdict, wasn't just the failure. It was the quietness of it all. In the end, what haunted people most was not just what Rockim did, but how he did it. He never rushed. He never shouted. He planned, calculated, and hid in plain sight. He made himself into whoever he needed to be to get what he wanted. And that, psychologists said, was his greatest weapon. Not the mask itself, but his understanding of human trust. He knew people would believe their eyes, their screens, their hearts. He knew how to slip past defenses, whether through a rubber disguise or a friendly message on an app, and that knowledge made him one of the most dangerous kinds of predators.